Here, let's see. He says the call is dropping before he could pick it up. So let's see if we can't get this right here one more time. Well, something's wrong. Who knows? Could always could be. Which one is dropping though? I'm using just two different ones here. Let's see. We can try this one again, I suppose. There it goes. No. For some reason, it's just not working. So I'm going to have to, well, let's see. Just give me a second. Give me a second. I got something here. Hold on a second. I'm going to have to try something else. I got to get in my bag of tricks here. Let's see if we can get Terry on. Just give me a second, folks. I'm trying. Oh, I don't want to play the song. Oh, here we go. Let's try this. What else can I do? These days as I wait until after the news, and then if I am going to broadcast on YouTube, I will. Obviously, I posted earlier in the night or the day, and well, then I bring us on at 9:30 over there because. That's not. There we go. So am I. So you all set there, or you still plugging in?
I'm plugged in.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think that fixed it. Absolutely, it did. Well, listen, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. I guess I'll start where I do with all my guests and a little bit of background. I mean, you obviously have some credentials. You're not just some crazy man out there, and you've got an interesting story. So how did all this get started? Did you have an interest in this kind of thing beforehand? Kind of take us to the beginning. Take us into it.
Well, the real beginning, I saw flying saucers twice when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. We were living in St. Louis, Missouri. It was 1963. I was in my backyard, and I saw actually, I was playing with a bow and arrow, and I saw this round circle move across my feet, and I looked up, and I saw this perfect disc, and it was beautiful. It was just a really cool experience. And I screamed for my mother. She came running out. She didn't see it, of course, because it shot off before she could get out there. But that was my first experience. But that's just a teeny bit. This really, I had this experience in 1977, and I could never tell anyone. I made my living in the law, and if I were to have told this story, I'd have lost all my
Well,
my
right.
peer.
And
Yeah,
listen, we should point out that in the 70s, it wasn't as popular as it is today to talk about these things. You get yourself in quite a jam, couldn't you?
you could, and I came very close to being in a jam with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and I
And
could.
yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, for this to make sense, let me go and tell you how the genesis of the thing and
All right.
how it all got started.
Yes, sir. And
Uh,
listen, you could take your time and give us the details. We're not rushy and pushy here on this show. I want to hear it.
nice, good. In October 2012, I retired January 1st, 2012, and in October of 2012, I got up and threw my legs over the side of the bed and stood up, and I couldn't support my weight on my right knee. And I told my wife, I said, I think I need to have this checked out. I get all my health care from the VA. I said, why don't you run me down to the hospital? I'll get an x-ray because something is wrong here. Uh, and, I knew that my knees were kind of worn out. I was a runner for 40 years. So the year that I left the Air Force, 1979, I picked up running and became kind of addicted to it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. And, I didn't run marathons or anything, but I'd do 4 or 5 miles a day, but I'd run every day.
Hey, it's a
And
good habit to have.
yeah, it was. It
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
The weirdest thing, right as I would hit the 2 mile mark in my run, every single time, without exception, there was an area above my right knee, just above my right knee and lateral, that would go completely numb. And it was about as big as a $half, and I could take a pen and clearly delineate the edges. It was a perfect circle, and it was just absolutely dead, like I'd had a shot of Novocaine or something in it. So uh, I asked my doctor, I said, well, what is this? She says, I don't know. It's a histamic reaction of some kind, probably. She says, I wouldn't worry about it. So I didn't. I didn't worry about it until 2012, when my wife took me to the hospital. The X-ray technician takes a couple shots of my leg, and she looks puzzled, and she comes out and she retakes, does the set over again. And then she asked me, she said, did you get in an accident or have a shrapnel wound or something that can account for this piece of what looks like metal in your leg with wire? And I said, no. I said, I've never had an injury to that leg.
Wow.
And so she called and I asked her, I said, can you show me what you're talking about? She said, sure. She showed me, and you should have a copy of that X-ray. There is one X-ray that shows a square thing about the size of a fingernail with two wires attached to it.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to try to get the pictures up on the screen here because I'm also simulcasting on YouTube, and I'm waiting on our webmaster to maybe get something up where we could show guest pictures. We just have a new website that's being still being worked out, little things here and there. So.
Ah,
So we're not
I,
there yet with the pictures. So, but I can put them on screen for folks, and so I will as we
I,
move here. I gotta go fish them up though. But yeah, go ahead. So you got an object then? Was
yeah. So the radiologist comes in and says, look, anytime you get an object this size and this deep in your fascia and tissue, he says it had to breach the integrity of your skin. He says you got to have a scar there. And I said, I told the technician I never injured this leg. And he was kind of cocky about it. And he's like, I bet you, I'm sure you did. You don't remember. It might have happened when you were a child. And he had like an intern. It's a teaching hospital. So he had an intern with him. And he insisted on examining my leg. And he got frustrated and turned the lights off in the X-ray room. It was dark there anyway, and used a handheld blacklight to examine my leg, looking for a scar, because I guess scar tissue will fluoresce under a blacklight.
oh, okay.
And he turns the lights back on, and I said, well, doctor, how often is it that you find a foreign object under the skin and there not be a corresponding scar? And he said, never. He said, I've been a radiologist for 23 years. I've never seen this before.
So
And
yeah. So what is? I mean, did they try to find out what? I got the X-ray up on screen right now, and that's pretty interesting.
yeah, well, I saw that. And I want to be clear, I never told anybody about what happened in 1977 um, for a lot of reasons. But when I saw that thing above my knee, it hit me. I mean, it was like a punch in the face. It was like, that's the spot where your leg goes numb every time you hit the 2 mile mark in your run.
Yeah.
And I made the connection. And I said, well, that thing has to have been in my leg since at least 1979, if not before.
Yeah.
So,
So
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 there's the second X-ray. He said, you've got some other things. He says, you've got some bones in your leg. And I'm like, well, doctor, doesn't everyone have bones in their legs? May I see them? Will you show me what you're talking about? And he popped the second X-ray up on the view box, and there's an array of roundish kind of, I guess they look like little chunks of bone arranged in like a flower petal design almost, with a little
oh,
dot in the middle.
okay, that's the one I have up now. Okay, that's so there's another one then. Okay. So yeah, I
So,
have that one on screen now. Yeah.
and he says, you know, bone tissue doesn't just automatically sprout in the middle of a muscle. He says, I don't know what this is. He says, whatever it is, on X-ray film, it's the density of bone. But he said, like I said, I don't know how you got this thing in your leg, or I said, I've just never seen this before. So I went home, I was stunned. I mean, the first thing I want to do is get this thing out of my leg.
Oh, yeah. So did you? I mean, did anybody go in and try to, because I know that in the past, speaking with Dr. Roger Lear in the past, he said there was times when they'd go to get these things and they'd start moving, they start traveling. They don't want to be caught.
Yeah, well, and I, unfortunately, I tried to get a hold of Dr. Lear in 2014. I think he was in South America. He left the state of California. But yeah, I talked to surgeons. I talked to 3 surgeons at the VA, and they were like, well, I don't know what this is, but it's pretty cool. I'd love to take it out. And I was real insistent. I wanted to follow a chain of custody. So the thing goes from the surgeon's hand, from my body into my hand. So nobody can accuse me of switching or
Right.
and hopefully have my wife tape the thing and not, do it under a local anesthetic. So the surgeons are like, fine, no problem. All you need is a clearance letter from your cardiologist. And I'm like, okay. So I'd had a heart attack in 2005, and I had some residual heart damage from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2011, I had a second cardiac event, and they went in and put a stent in my heart. I had a bypass in 2005 and then a stent in 2011. So I go to my cardiologist and I said, I need a clearance letter. I want to get this thing out of my leg. And I had copies of the x-rays with me, and I handed them to him. And he looked at them, and he looked at my chart, and he says, I can't give you a clearance letter. And he says, there are 10,000 or 100,000, he said, veterans out there walking around with shrapnel in their leg. And he says, we don't remove it as a matter of course. It's a risk versus benefit analysis. And he says, there's a risk in surgery. He says, leaving this thing undisturbed, will do you no harm. You've got a history of heart failure. And he says, surgery is not, I can't give you a cardiac clearance letter.
Yeah.
So I'm ticked off, and I go to the outside. I leave the VA system and I go see a private cardiologist. Actually, I saw several private cardiologists. Nobody would give me a cardiac clearance letter. And it is, I did a little research. It is the standard of care in this country. So
the care in this guy, it's ridiculous. It's all for profit, obviously, and you're nothing but a customer. I mean, that's all it is. Keep it. Believe me, I was just going on about that earlier. I mean, half of the pharmaceuticals that they give you cause you other diseases and problems. I mean, so it's like once you get into that medical thing, I had a heart attack in 2014. But mine was because I was taking Chantix, quit smoking that crap, and it damaged one of my arteries. It clogged the artery up, and so far I've been okay after that. But I had a heart attack, and man, oh man, no fun at all. But once you get into the medical system like that, they want to just keep you sick. Oh, we got to put you on this. Every time I go to a cardiologist, they want to put me on something else. I'm constantly fighting with them. It's like, no. Yeah. Well, why do you want? Well, you don't need it, but I think it would help. Well, if I don't need it, I'm not taking it. It's no. So, but anyways, it's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, I'm with you, brother. I mean, it's all about the shareholders. That's what it's about.
It is, and it's too bad because I've talked to some cardiologists on this show who, one in particular, him and 3 other cardiologists claim that they have cured their heart disease by going on a pure, they went, I guess for 4 months, went on a nothing but plant-based diet, and it reversed it. So you might want to look into that kind of thing. It might help you a little. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
But
that would be a tough 4 months, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Oh, I'll look at that.
well, and then he told me after the 4 months, you kind of ration out what you eat. You know, you don't want to have double cheeseburgers every night. But,
Yeah,
but
I guess you ease back into it. Yeah.
yeah, so and you wonder sometimes when these ETs when they interact with people. I know we haven't gotten there yet, but we will. But when they interact with people, you think you got me up on the ship. Why don't you just fix me up? It's
Really.
like, but anyways, go ahead. So you had the implants. You couldn't get clearance to get this thing out then.
I could not. And what happened was, well, and I'll get to that in a minute. Let me go to the abduction.
Okay.
I'd really like to get to that
Okay.
because that's really what everyone wants to hear, and that's really kind of the meat of the story.
Sure.
I was working the night shift at Whiteman Air Force Base emergency room as a medic slash EMT. Drove an ambulance. I worked the night shift from 11 to 7. I did it for years. I always worked with the same guy. I refer to him as Tobias in the book. And Toby and I became good friends. And, we socialized together, played cards, barbecued. We both lived in NCO housing, so we lived close to one another. And, we just clicked. We made a good team together.
Mm-hmm.
And one night about 2 a.m., we were playing hearts, and he says, "Hey, man, I got an idea. Let's go camping." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? What do you know about camping, Toby? Come on, man. You grew up in Flint. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Neither one of us have ever been camping." And he's like, "No, no, no. Think about it, man. Think about it." He knew that I had just bought a new camera. I bought a nice camera with a telephoto lens with the idea of taking some nature photographs. I wanted to photograph eagles, deer, owls, whatever I could find. And we lived on base, and Whiteman at the time, well, and still is, a nuclear base. When I was there, they had a squadron of B-52s armed with nukes and a squadron of Minutemen II ICBM missiles spread out all across the countryside. So when you live on a nuclear base, there's not much you can do with a camera.
Yeah, you get yourself in a lot of trouble.
So what he said kind of made sense. And he says, "Look, this isn't rocket science. We go buy a cheap tent, we buy a couple of blow-up air mattresses, we swipe some blankets from the hospital, some military strength DEET and sunscreen, and we're good to go." And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do this. Let's try this. It might be fun,
Sure.
And I was married to my wife at the time, and he had just got married, and he's like, "Yeah, let's go. We'll check it out, and if it's fun next time, we'll bring our wives and make it a big family kind of thing." So we went, and we drove. It was over 6 hours south to Devil's Den State Park. I have no idea. To this day, I don't remember where the idea to go to Devil's Den came from, but it was Toby's idea, and there were beautiful parks, 45-minute drive from the base that we could have gone to, but he was insistent. He was like, "Man, this is the place to go." He says, "This will have everything we're looking for." And I should explain, he was a really bright kid. He took Central Missouri State University had an extension campus on base, and you could take classes there. And he had taken every physics class and upper math class they had, and aced them all. And that's the reason he worked night shift. He liked to watch the night sky. He knew all the constellations. He could tell you when a satellite was going to come over. This guy lived to watch the stars. And his plan was to go to University of Michigan, study physics, and then go on to graduate work in astronomy. So he brought some binoculars, and we brought a camera. Toby had a camera in his bag. We had the usual stuff you take: hot dogs. We had 1 6-pack of beer. Neither one of us were drinkers to speak of. A couple gallons of water, and we drove into Devil's Den State Park. And this was 1977. It wasn't as built up as it is today. It was a much more rural area. it was just pretty much Ozark Mountains and locals, and that was
Sure.
it. So we got to the park, and it was gorgeous. It was a beautiful place. And we pulled in, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the uh, park ranger station over here and get us a camping permit. Toby's like, no, are you crazy? He's like, why are we going to spend $3 on a camping permit? He says, look, if we stay in the campground, we're going to be parked right next to another camper. And they're probably going to have kids and other undesirables running around. And, it's just, it's not going to be any good. He says, we're going to be outdoorsmen here. Let's go find our own spot. So I kind of liked the idea. So we did. And we drove, uh, took a back road and drove to the northwest. And I came across a chain in the road with a pretty intimidating sign that said "No admittance, keep out." And I stopped at that chain and I said, "Oh, it looks like we're not going any further here." And Toby's like, "No, no, wait a minute, man, wait a minute." He hops out of the car, and that chain had just been looped around the post on the opposite side of the road, and a padlock on it to form like a little loop. So he
Hmm.
goes out, he picks up the chain off the post, drops it, and it falls to the ground, chink, and we're in, and we both felt like like Lewis and Clark or something. We were just on top of the world, and we drove into this park, and we kept going on an upward grade, and we came to a pretty steep grade going up a dirt road, and when we crested that hill, we saw this big open expanse. I call it a meadow, and I think I sent you some pictures of it. It's the only elevated plateau you can see. And the place where we camped back in 1977 is still there. And it should be overgrown with 40-year-old mature trees by now, but it's not. It's clear cut. Somebody comes with a tractor and cuts the grass. And it's just this kind of triangular shape. I think it's a landing pad.
Wow.
At least it was the night that we stayed there. So we set up camp, and we made a fire. We did all the stuff you do when you're camping. And I remember saying to my friend, I was
Yeah.
saying, Toby, this is really pretty cool. I can understand how people like this. This must be the allure of camping. And he's like, yeah, I told you, this is nice. And it was nice. It was pleasant. And this sounds cliche, I know, but I swear to God it's true. And I've talked to, Calvin Parker, Travis Walton. I've talked to a lot of experiencers, and they tell me similar stories.
Terry, I have no reason not to believe you. This is your experience, and I have you on because I want to hear it, not because I want to challenge it. So, by all
Well,
means, go
well,
ahead.
it was weird. There was a lull in our conversation. We just kind of ran out of talk, and we're sitting there, and I noticed that the crickets and the tree frogs that had been so loud just like 10 minutes earlier, we could hardly talk to one another. And now it was
Yeah.
dead still. And not only did all the forest sounds go away, uh, even the breeze, we had a nice breeze going, and it was gone. And it was just dead still. And, had I been there by myself, I'd have gotten in the car and got out of there. But, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be all freaked out. I did say, Toby, man, is this normal? How quiet it is, how still it is out here. And he's like, yeah, man, there's nothing to worry about. We were laughing and cutting up. They'll be back. The crickets, the tree frogs, they'll come back. Don't worry about it. And but I did worry about it. I was unnerved by it.
I would too.
And about 30 minutes later, we just had some light conversation going on, and he turns his head to the left, and he's looking at something. And he asked me, he said, hey, Terry, were those lights there before? And I'm like, what lights? What are you talking about? And I had to get up. I was kicked back on my air mattress, and I got up, and he points to the horizon. And sitting on the horizon is this grouping of 3 stars. And each star is about as bright as the North Star. So they're pretty bright. But they're in a perfect little triangle, tight triangle, and they're sitting too far above the horizon to have been like a parking lot or a train or something. Um, but we didn't know any aircraft that had any kind of light configuration like that. And Toby says, "Well, let's watch it for a moment. If it's some kind of plane and it's headed toward us, it's going to look like it's standing still."
Yeah.
So we watched it for 15 minutes and it didn't move. And we're talking about what this thing could be, and it's funny. While we're talking about that, I had this feeling of calm come over me, and all that anxiety that I had about it getting still and the noises being gone, that was all gone. I felt calm, uh, and I felt that wash over me in a wave. And it was at that point that these things moved. And when they first moved, they rotated like they were on an axis. They made about a 3/4 turn and then started to go up into the sky. And, we were under some kind of influence. There's hardly a word said between us, and we're just watching this thing play out. And it felt to me like I was some kind of detached observer. I was almost disinterested. I wouldn't say apathetic, but my reaction was not appropriate to what's going on. And we watched this thing, these three stars, as they climb up into the sky, and it's a beautiful blue sky because there's a trillion stars out. There's not a cloud in the sky. Mm. And we watched these three lights, and we can see that in between the lights, it's dark, where it's blue in the surrounding area, and surrounding night sky. And this thing does somersaults and turns and moves. And I remember thinking, and I don't know what gave me that notion, but I remember thinking that this thing is moving with purpose. It's not just out of control tumbling. It's doing what it wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it became pretty evident that it was headed in our direction. And I think the only thing said was Toby said they're really moving now or something. And we were on this plateau. We could see the shadow of this thing. There was enough starlight that this thing cast a shadow, and we could see a shadow move across the forest below us. It was spooky, and this thing got bigger. And the closer it got, the bigger it got. It climbed to like a ceiling. It climbed as high and then made a descent, and it came down. We were camped kind of offset near the tree line, and this thing filled this whole meadow that I called it.
Yeah. And I've got the pictures up of the area, and it almost looks like when I look at this, it almost looks like I got to get this thing out of my way, but it almost looks like there used to be a giant tree growing there, and somebody cut the tree down. Like
yeah,
it looks like a platform.
Yeah, a guy on Facebook sent me a message. I posted it, and he says that's been cut with a tractor. And he does yards and garden. He's a gardener basically, and owns a lawn service. And he says, I'm down in Mississippi, and he says I can tell you can see the stalks of the plants are laying down. He says they've been cut, and he says someone clean cuts that, he called it.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
And boy, I'll tell you, this thing that we saw was triangular shaped, and it had lights on each point of the triangle. And it came in and it stopped, I'm guessing about 3,000 feet over our heads. And I'm not bad with distance. I think that's going to be pretty close, about the height of a 3-story building over our heads. And we're looking at this thing. We can see the lights. We can only see two points of the triangle, the way the thing's positioned. Of course, you couldn't see all three. And we couldn't see the underside. It was just black. And from the underside of this thing, there came a light. And a beam of light. And she came from dead center of this thing. And it was about the diameter of a softball, about 6 inches in diameter. And it was a visible light. It was like You know how like a searchlight cuts through fog, and you see the light beam. That's what this was like, but there was no fog.
Yeah.
And this
Oh.
beam of light landed square in our campfire. And I looked at Toby, he looked at me, and we looked at this thing, and we were just kind of, ah. And
That,
that lasted about a minute. And then as soon as it went off, a laser beam came down. Now, lasers were kind of a new concept in 1977, and I'd seen them on
yeah.
television, but I'd never seen one for real. And this purplish, about the diameter of a pencil, uh, bluish purple light coming from the same place, the bottom of this triangle, and it would land in one spot for like a tenth of a second and then reappear in another spot like it was turned on and turned off really quick, like 10 times a second. So it gave the illusion this light was dancing all over because it always went in a different, landed in a different area. And it landed on my chest twice. I didn't feel anything, but it landed on me. It landed on Toby, landed on the car. And I remember thinking, this thing is scanning us. This thing's checking us out.
No kidding. Yeah. See, you're talking to somebody who has seen crafts. I've not, as far as I know, not been on them, but I've seen them. So believe me, this is not crazy to me. And yeah, but go. It's amazing. So the light beam hits you, and so you feel like they're scanning you.
That's right. That's right. And that feeling of calm that washed over me, that that kind of moved into almost sedation. There's no doubt that whatever these things are, they had control of us.
Yeah.
We were in their control, and we just sat there. You know, this laser beam danced around the campsite for about 3 minutes, and then it turned off. And I remember that thinking, Toby, you were wrong, man, because the crickets and the tree frogs never did come back. And
Yeah.
but I felt sleepy all of a sudden. Now, I'm 22 years old. I mean, I'm used to working a night shift. I shouldn't have been sleepy. Tired, maybe, but there's a difference in tired
Oh,
and sleepy.
22. Boy, do I miss that. Yeah.
Amen, brother. Boy.
Yeah.
And
So,
I,
so go
and
ahead.
I, yeah, I felt sedated. I did. And Toby stood up and he said, "Show's over." And that's the only thing that was said between us. He threw his air mattress into the tent and just fell on it face first. And then once he was in, small tent, right? I think we paid $12 for it new. And I threw my air mattress in, and I didn't bother to dress, take my shirt off, unlace my boots, anything. I just fell on top of this mattress, and I was out. I mean, I was out like a light. And the best we can recollect and reconstruct, about 4.5 hours passed.
Yeah.
And I woke up, and these lights were shining through the canvas of the tent. And they were greenish, yellowish, and white, and they were intermittent. They weren't on a schedule or something. They weren't predictable. They were just, maybe flash, flash, and then you never knew when one was coming. But every time this light would flash, man, it lit up the inside of that tent like a ballpark at night. I mean, it was bright, and I'm confused. I'm confused. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm camping. That's right, I'm camping with Toby. And I'm thinking, these lights must be the overhead lights from like a park ranger's truck or something.
Yeah.
And I could hear this noise. There was this droning noise. If you've ever been in a factory and stood next to a big manufacturing machine or
Oh, I
like a
have.
diesel locomotive, or you have, then you know the feeling, the noise I'm talking about. It's not so much loud as it is powerful. You can feel it in your chest.
Yeah.
And I heard that, and I thought, park ranger running a generator in the back of a truck, and he's got to be here to kick us out. It doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
And I sit up, and I realize I'm in a lot of pain, and I notice my boots are undone. My laces are undone. And I thought, well, I don't remember doing that. I took my shoe off. My socks were on sideways. Now, when you're in the military, one of the things they teach you is to take care of your feet, and
Yeah.
I would never have done that. So I was confused by that. So I put my socks on correctly and laced up my boots. And from my peripheral vision, whenever there was a flash of good light, I could see that Toby was on his knees, peeking out of the tent flap. So I got my boots laced up and I got to my knees and I asked him, I said, Toby, what is it, man? Is it park rangers? Who's out there? And he just put his finger across his lips in the universal be quiet motion. And I think, said, shh, quiet. And I'm like, what is it? What is going on? And that's when I noticed he had tracks of tears. In one of these flashes of light, I could see that he'd been crying. Now that freaked me out. That was a moment that I'll never forget, because I could not imagine what would move this man to tears. And I opened my side of the tent flap on the right side, and I looked out into the meadow, and I saw two things: that this giant triangle the size of Walmart has descended and is now, like, instead of being I said 30 feet, I meant 3,000 feet. Earlier in the evening, it was 3,000 feet over our heads. Mm-hmm. And now it had descended to 30 feet. So it is like right on top of us now.
And I could relate to that because my autumn and I we seen a huge crash, like you said, size of Walmart. This thing was big. I call it a mothership, but then I get corrected and say, well, there's motherships much bigger than that. So, but it was big, and just like you, it was probably maybe 2 pine trees up. I mean, it was that close. I felt like I could have threw a rock at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed was these little guys. They were about 12 or 15 of these little guys, and they were paired up in 2s and 3s. Oh, wow. And they're just kind of walking all over the meadow, like they're just checking things out. And I'm looking, and I can't see them very well until the flashes of light. Then I can see. Then it kind of illuminates the whole meadow. And I'm like, Toby, what are these kids doing out here, man? We're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you wish, right?
Yeah. And that's when it all sank in. He says, Terry, man, look again. Those ain't no little kids. Oh, and he said, they took us, Terry. They took us and they hurt us. You remember? And I could remember just bits and pieces, just flashes, of memory. And I was scared. I was scared out of my wits. Most scared I've ever been in my life. These little guys, on second look, I could see he's absolutely right. These were not human beings. Their heads were disproportionately large to their body. You know what they look like? They look like the things that walked off of that movie. What was the name of the movie? Where the guy had. Anyway, they had big heads, spindly bodies. Their arms were disproportionately long, and they walked with a funny gait. They had a distinctive walk.
So like a bow-legged kind of.
Yeah, kind of like that, or kind of like their shoes hurt, like their feet were sore or something.
Could be big heads.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe our gravity was different. Something was different because they walk funny.
Yeah.
And we're watching these little guys, and my friend starts to hyperventilate, and I'm like, "Man, you got to get control of your breathing, Toby." And he eventually does, and we're trying to absolutely be dead quiet, dead still, but we're watching, and while we're watching, I don't know how much time had passed. 20 minutes would be my guess. There was another column of light that came from the bottom of this thing. And this time, it was a cylinder of light, just like the one that landed in our campfire. But this one was like 25 feet in diameter. And it was that same quality of visible light, like I said, like the searchlight through fog. We could see the light. And these little guys in 2s and 3s would just meander into this light and dissolve and be gone. And we watched over the course of about 10 minutes until the last pair walked into the light and they were gone. And as soon as they were gone, the light turns out and that droning noise that had, now, you listen to something long enough, you get used to it.
Yeah.
The droning noise that I had heard, that stopped. And then the points of light that had been multicolored, I called it a light bar. There was a bar on each point of the triangle that ran from the very bottom to the very top of the thing. And there was a intense white light that ran up and down that light bar. And I remember thinking that must be what makes it look like a star twinkling when it's in the sky. That served a purpose. So the lights turned to all white, and this thing took off. And it didn't take off like a rocket ship. I mean, it lifted off like a hot air balloon. And it rose up into the air, and it made a little turn and continued to rise. And the higher it went, the faster it went. And we watched it till it was 3 dots of light, and then 1 dot, and then gone. And
wow, that's amazing. Listen, I want to just hold it right there. Let's take this break. We got to take a break, and then when we come back, I want to hold it right there, and I want to come back. I want to talk more about that experience. What kind of things do you remember? What did your friend remember about it? What was going on while they had you? I mean, how much do you know? And we'll get into all that when we come back. I find these stories amazing, and I believe him 100% because everything he's saying as far as how these crafts, I mean, that's how it is. It's how it is too. It seems like they start off slow, and they gradually, all of a sudden, doop, they're gone. They just, and these beings. Look, if it's not kids and it's not midgets, oh boy, it's a party time, right? From out of this world. I'm Michael Vera. This is Late Night in the Midlands. My guest, he is Terry Lovelace, and he is sharing rather, an amazing story of, abduction, alien abduction. Don't go away, folks. Late Night in the Midlands on WCET FM. We'll be back in just a few minutes. I got to remember this. You talking about what actually happened, Terry. So your friend was able to fill in a lot of the things that you weren't. But so what did you guys figure out? I mean, what were they doing to you guys?
Well, here's the way it was. Really, it's not like he filled me in. It's when he said, "Don't you remember that I had bits and pieces?" I've never been able to reconstruct a clear linear memory of what happened that night. But I get flashes, I get bits and pieces, and of being inside that thing, and that's been the stuff of my nightmares for 40 years. I mean, I'm talking once or not often. The nightmares were really pretty bad. 1977, obviously, through about 1980, and then they eased up a bit, and for the last 30 years or so, it might have 1 or 2 a year. But they are wake up screaming kind of nightmares where I got to get my flashlight and my pistol and make sure that the house is locked, and wow. I'm really freaked out.
So you kind of, it's maybe fair to say you got a little what do you call it there? PST? PTSD. You got a little bit of that going on with all this stuff.
I did. I was tested for that because my wife, was tired of me waking up screaming, and she says, why don't you go, you got a good insurance plan. Why don't you go talk to a therapist or something? And I'm like, who am I going to tell that I saw, UFO the size of Walmart? Who's going to listen to me?
Well, and here's the thing, too. Sometimes these therapists are trained to make you believe that they're with you. Oh, yes, I believe everything you're saying. Meanwhile, if you've seen the notes that they're making. But go ahead. Yeah, so did you go to a therapist? And how do you go about that when and knowing that are they going to take you serious?
Well, here's what I did. And I did this really more to satisfy my wife than anything else. I went and I said, I'd like to talk to somebody. I've been having repeated nightmares. uh, just crazy nightmares. And I'd like to, you know, I've got my insurance company pays for 10 sessions. I'd like to just have a session or two. So this therapist said, before we sit down and talk, she said, I'd like you to take a test for me. And I took this 3-hour test. It was called the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. And it's a commonly used test by psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists. And it is like 500 questions of, would you rather take a walk in the park or fly a kite? Would you prefer to eat beans or take a walk in the garden? Just crazy questions. But I answered all of these and came back the following week, and she says, you're suffering from PTSD. And I told her, I said, I have these things, I call them intrusive thoughts, where I have flashes of images from my nightmares. And she says, yeah, those are called flashbacks. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, flashbacks. So how much have you been able to learn through those flashbacks and do you trust what comes to you?
I do. I've got a couple of scenarios that happened to me that I can recall, that I have a clear memory of. And I wrote these down. I might mention that I journaled these, and my wife had suggested, as a way of coping with the nightmares, that I journal them. So when I'd wake up, I'd grab a pencil and paper and I'd sit down and I'd write out the nightmare, what it was. And that became routine, and it was kind of calming, kind of getting a pencil and getting it on paper and getting it out of my head, more or less. So it gave me a pretty good journal to sit down. I had notebooks stacked away that I used to help write the book, but the memories are crystal clear. And I'll tell you what I saw, and that was, I have no idea how they got us inside the ship. And I'm not even 100% certain that the ship that we were in was the ship that we were looking at, because the thing on the inside looked much bigger than it did from the outside. I mean, from the outside, it was like a 5-story medical building or something. But on the inside, this thing looked like a stadium. I mean, it was crazy. It made no sense.
Wow. They are masters of illusion, I think.
I think they must be. Yeah. I was in this huge atrium, and were these levels that went, 5 stories up. And there were these little gray guys running all over the place. And I saw 3 flying saucers parked. I mean, they were parked like planes below a carrier deck, right in a straight line, right by some stuff that looked like garage doors. And there's a lot of activity going on. These little guys are running around. And I'm standing there, and I have all of my clothing in my hand. I'm nude. They stripped us. I got my clothing in my hands, and I can't move. The only thing I can move is my eyes. I don't know if you've ever talked to Calvin Parker or not. Calvin had the identical.
Let me just say, Calvin Parker, I put him right up there with Travis Walton. Those are two of my favorites, two I think that are absolutely genuine.
They are. Yeah. They're the real deal. They really are. And, I love it, because when we sit down and talk, 2 people that have a shared experience, if you're legit, you're gonna click.
Yeah.
And Calvin told me he had experienced the same thing. The only thing he could move was his eyes. So, man, my eyes are looking all over, trying to drink in as much of this thing as I can. And everything is stainless steel, looks like stainless steel, or white. And it would be like if you went in your house and you took every light bulb out and replaced it with a 500-watt bulb. I couldn't tell where the light was coming from, but this place was lit really, really bright. I mean, it hurt my eyes. And matter of fact, I went to the hospital after this and was treated for, they call it flash burn. It's the same burn that arc welders get if they don't wear a mask. It's basically a sunburn to the cornea of your eye.
Ooh.
And I'm standing there, I can't move, and I'm watching these little gray guys. And I have a theory about them. I don't think those are actually living like sentient beings. I think they're little robots, like, nanotechnology and AI and
I was gonna
quantum computing.
ask you, did they seem like that they're like you know how like ants, they got their thing, they're almost like programmed to do what they do, or did they seem that's how they seem then? They seem
Yes,
yeah.
they were all over the place, but they were all moving. They were all doing something. They were moving with purpose. Uh, they weren't just slacking off.
Yeah,
And
no
I
cigarette
saw,
breaks for them guys, huh?
no, no, no. And there was this being that I saw to my left, and he was about 6 feet tall. Where the little gray guys are like 3.5 feet tall. And this guy's a good 6 foot tall, maybe an inch or two taller. And he is a chalky pinkish complexion, not gray at all. But he's wearing a gray garment, some kind of like pullover shirt, pants, and boots. And I, and this is what haunted my, one of the things that haunts my sleep. I'm turning my eyes, I'm looking at this guy, and just by happenstance, he turns his head, and we locked eyes. And that uncomfortable millisecond you have when you lock eyes with a stranger.
Oh yeah.
That's what this was like, except that when we locked eyes, I could sense this guy was in my head. I really could. He was in. I don't know how to explain it, but he was in my head. He knew everything about me. He knew my wife. He knew my secrets, my family. He knew everything about me. And I don't know how that works. Uh, but the example that I like to give is, I got a dog. I love my dog. I love my cat. And I'll pet them, and I look in their eyes, and I get back from their eyes. I get trust, and they know that I'm the alpha, right?
Yeah.
This guy was the alpha. I was definitely the dog in this equation. Um,
Yeah, and
and
so they have this thing that they're able to do. So almost some speculate that's how they control these ships is through their minds. Like they think that's how they move so fast because it's just a thought, not an actual action.
well, you know what? I believe that. I mean, the guy staring back at me, what I got from his eyes, I know what he took from my head. He downloaded my brain, but what I got coming out of his eyes, there wasn't any compassion. It was just strictly business and just raw intellect. I mean, this thing was it was smart. I mean, it's probably 500 rungs up the evolutionary ladder from human beings. They're a smart guy, and
Yeah.
that was frightening. That was intimidating. The next memory I have was a woman screaming. I heard a woman screaming, and you know, you, there's all kinds of screams. I mean, you jump out, you grab somebody and say boo, and they'll scream, and then everybody has a laugh, and it's. But there's a scream that people make when they're in pain, and this woman sounded like she was hurting, and that went on for a while. And then I stopped, and then I became aware that my friend Toby, who was right next to me, was gone. And then I heard him screaming. Actually, I heard him say, oh my God, no, no, no," and just screaming. And I am terrified because I know my turn's coming, and it did. And the little gray guys came and they got me, and it was like I was on one of those motorized walkways like you have in the airport.
Yeah.
I was frozen and I could not move. I was in a standing position. They took my clothing from me and took me down this long hallway. Um, and I explained in the book that in this long hallway, from my peripheral vision, I could strain my eyes and see there were these rows and rows of what looked like aquariums filled with pink water. And a couple of them had what I thought were puppies. They just looked weird. Just you know, how a newborn puppy has folds of skin all over it, and
Yeah.
that's what these things look like. And there were maybe half a dozen of them. And as I was looking at one, its eye opened, and it scared me to death. And um, I couldn't say anything. And they took me into this white domed room with a dome. And it was really bright, and what looked like a porcelain table. And the little gray guys laid me on the table. And I remember thinking that it was going to be cold, but it wasn't. It was warm. And then it hit me as, it's warm because there's been bodies on here. There's been people on here. And this insect thing. Now, this is weird. And I've had people tell me that I talked to a woman, actually, who had a run-in with the same creature. This thing looked like a praying mantis. It looked like a big bug. I called him Dr. Bug. She called him the Surgeon General. What's weird is I knew somehow this was a medical being or entity of some kind. In my mind's eye, I see this thing wearing a white lab coat. Now, I don't think he actually wore a white lab coat, but I think they projected that image.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if one of them big pharma doctors was over on that ship. Who knows? Maybe this is where it's all coming from. But go ahead. I regress.
Yes. Yeah. Briefcase full of cash. Yes.
Yeah.
So whatever they're doing to my lower back, this guy is hurting me, and I mean it hurts, and I'm screaming. And I fill my lungs with air, and I'm screaming as loud as I can scream. And I can't hear anything. I hear nothing but silence. And I did not understand that. And I kept thinking that nobody can hear me. I need to scream louder. And then I was screaming from pain, too. And I'm filling my lungs with air and screaming, and nothing's coming out. But something must have been coming out because I annoyed Dr. Bug. And it turned its big head. It had this two big bulbous eyes, and it was green. It turned its head, and it kind of tilted its head sideways, and with its left eye looks in my eyes, and I heard him in my head with crystal clarity, as clear as any spoken word. I heard this thing say to me, "Stop screaming. Why are you screaming? You know we don't hurt you. You know we take you back. Now stop screaming." And he hit me in the head with something, in the forehead with something, and I was out. I mean, I was out.
So these things don't play nice.
A couple of other things I want to mention was that there were some other people that we saw when we were inside this craft. And I don't know who they are or where they came from, but there was a mixed bag of men, women, and children. And they were all in the same state of undress. They were all holding their clothes. Their eyes are darting all over the place. And they're all crying. And I see these people, and I'm like, oh my! But we were segregated from them. They were off to one side, and that's one thing that's preyed on my mind all these years is what happened to those people.
Yeah, you got me thinking now. Do they bring everybody back? Because there's a lot of missing people that can't be accounted for.
Well, I'm going to hopefully track down David Paulides. He's going to be at the Ozark Mountain UFO conference, and I'm speaking there in April.
Well, if you do, tell him I said hello. I've been trying to get a hold of that guy. I've not got a response. I think once I got a response, he was busy. He was going to get back to me, and I haven't heard from him. So.
Man, he's never returned my emails. But,
well, they get so busy they don't. I'm the dummy who sits there and goes through all my email and tries to answer everybody. All these other guys don't.
Yeah. Well, I was abducted from a state park, and I mean, he's trying to figure out where these people go. Well, I think I might know where at least some of them go.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you got, what is the deal? What do they do? I mean, are they bringing them to some other planet? Are they repopulating somewhere? Or do we have an idea of what they're up to?
I have no clue. I mean, my imagination runs wild. I mean, they could be slaves, they could be food, they could be anything.
But then you got to ask the question: why the heck did they bring you guys back? Why did they bring Travis back? Why did they bring Parker back, Calvin Parker? Yeah. So why does some come back and some don't? So that's kind of sketchy to me. Not saying that maybe it is that way, but is it that way? Do some come back and some don't?
I wish I knew. I wish I
Yeah.
knew. I had thought about that for years, like I said, and it was preyed on my mind. And then I read Missing 411, and I thought,
Yeah,
people
yeah.
do go missing. People do just vanish, and there's no trace, and there's no evidence of predation or a crime, or they're just gone.
Yeah, and what gets me is, in a lot of these abduction cases, people will, they'll tell how they seen the craft and how all of a sudden the last thing they remember is seeing the craft leaving. And so, and I don't know. I think that there's a lot more people who have been abducted than no. I think like you're talking about all these children and other people who are on these ships. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe everybody gets abducted at some point. We just don't know it.
I was amazed. I put my book on Amazon in April, I think April of 2018, and I put my email address in the back. And I've received over 1,200 emails to that address from people all over
Well,
the world.
well, Terry, blessings to you for doing that because I can't tell you how many of the guests that I have on that it's not easy to get a hold of these people. I mean, you got to go through channels to get them. I mean, they don't make it easy. And sometimes I wonder why. It's like, come on, you got a story. People want to hear it, not just read it. Come on. Make it easier to get in contact. Some of them, it don't matter what you do. It's like they got more security than the president.
Yeah, it's a routine for me. For almost 2 years now, I make a pot of coffee in the morning. I sit down. I return every one of those emails. But the only reason I mention it is, you would not believe the thread of commonality that runs through all of these. And they usually start out like this. Now, please don't think I'm crazy, or I know this is going to sound weird, or don't they all start with that disclaimer. And then they tell me these amazing stories. I mean, I could turn these stories that they send me into a book. I mean, like this missing Christmas store. This lady told me about, she and her husband were driving from Reno, Nevada to Las Vegas. And they were driving at night. I forget the highway. It was some old highway. And this was back in the 70s. And they passed this Christmas store in this little town that they'd never noticed before. And this thing was lit up. And it's like 2 a.m. And she said it just had like 1,000,000 lights on it. And there was bright light shining out through the windows. And they both looked at it and said, man, that's strange. I asked her, I said, did you guys end up missing any time? Did you? And she said, no, we don't think so. And she said that the following weekend, they were so confused by it that they went back to try to find it. They drove 2.5 hours back out in the desert, and there is no Christmas store. Never has been. They stopped at the post office. No, such thing. Never heard of it. Never seen it. And I get, people that have memories from their childhood where there were owls in their room, or bright orbs, or even Disney characters. Cartoon characters, raccoons, lots of owls, and little gray guys. And when I was a little kid, I saw monkeys come into my room, these 4 little monkeys.
Yeah. And, I believe you're not going to get me. I won't laugh at you because this world that we're in, whatever, and all the worlds that are around it that we can't, I mean, I put nothing past nothing anymore. If somebody told me they saw the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man run through the city, I'd have to give it consideration.
Agreed. It's a weird world.
It is. And, I've seen things as a child too. I remember when my mother had 2 dogs. She had a Maltese and a poodle. And one night I woke up, I was probably about 9, 10 years old. I woke up and I had this dream that my mother was walking up the driveway with the dog, and the dog got hit by a car. And I remember the dream scared the hell out of me. I woke up, I go downstairs, I walk into the kitchen, and just as I walk in, my mother's coming in the door with the dog. And later, it was that Saturday that week, I woke up and I seen the dog's ghost go through the wall like it was saying goodbye or something. So I've seen some weird stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I was in an apartment that had ghost activity, and again, it's if the story don't start out with "Don't think I'm crazy," but then it's probably not true because when these things that I mean, even when it happens to you, like the UFO sightings that I've had that have been amazing, I pinch myself. I just can't believe it, and even more so is it's like a adrenaline rush. It's like a drug. I want more. It's like I just haven't gotten enough.
yeah. My wife and I have been together a long time. I'll see something in the sky, and I'll say, "Hey, look at that," and she's like, "I don't see anything." She can never see these things,
Yeah, there's
you know.
that happens too. Listen, I had a sighting once in Rochester, and the guy, and he's got hell of credentials, just like you. He's a pretty, he's got a good background. And well, we seen a craft together, and we talked about it that night for a whole long ride that we had. He had to drop me off home. The next day, he claimed he didn't remember it no more.
Right.
I started talking about it, and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember that." And I mean, he must have been thinking I'm crazy, and I'm like, "No, no, no. We both seen it together. I mean, it happened, but he don't remember it."
Well, I've got probably 50 letters from family members who were together and saw something, and they won't talk about it. Uh,
Yeah.
I had this one was a surgical nurse from Kentucky, and she sent me a letter, and she said, she's 76 right now, and she lost her younger sister to breast cancer in the mid 90s, and they were abducted when they were 9 and 11, respectively, off their grandpa's farm in Kentucky. And they were missing. There was a big search for them. They were missing like for 4 hours. And she has no memory of what happened to her. But her sister refused to talk about it. And she said on her deathbed, on my sister's deathbed, I said, "Do you want to talk about what happened at Grandpa's?" And she said, "No." Turned her face to the wall, refused to talk about it.
Oh man, you can't take that stuff to the grave with you.
No.
No, not that stuff. Even if I was at risk, if like I was military or something like that, or some branch where I can't talk about these things, but I know something. Once I'm on my deathbed and I know I'm not going to get through this, why not? I mean, but they know what they say then. Oh, well, yeah, the doctors had him on some drugs. And,
Oh yeah, right.
yeah, so
Morphine.
you can't win. You just can't win. But anybody who thinks that we're alone and none of this stuff's going on, I mean, they're the ones that are crazy because this stuff is going on constantly. And these crafts, it's amazing. If they want you to see them, you see them. If they don't
Yes.
want you to see them, you're not going to see them. And they could be right above you, treetops, and you're not
Yes.
going to see them.
Yeah.
It,
It,
it's incredible.
it is incredible, and I think that you're absolutely right. I think there are certain people that, for whatever reason, we see stuff that other people don't see. I thank God I got a phone now. I can take pictures of some of the stuff. Um, I sent you some pictures, stuff that I saw that's just pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I have. Now there's one I was going through. There's one. It's like a really bright, something really bright in the clouds. What is that? Or was that someone else? But I got so many pictures sent to me that
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
I had a, I had a picture of blue sky,
Oh yeah,
uh,
I got that one. I'll put it up too. Go
and
ahead.
then there was I think I sent you one with the jets, four jets in formation.
Okay, yeah, I think. Oh, is it called Dogfight?
Yeah,
Oh
that's it.
yeah, yeah. Okay, that's the bright light one that I was like really bright.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that there were two glowing white discs flying around the sky, and these four jets that you see engaged them. They flew at this thing, and my wife and I both saw. I had the camera up to my face. We saw a flash of white light, and then the white disc was gone, and the jets just regrouped back into a formation and flew away. And I just happened to catch that on camera, and I think that's just like one heck of a picture. you can see what looks like a laser beam or something going through the middle of the picture, and then a big
Yeah.
flash in the middle. And if you look close, you can see the fighter planes in the smoke or the
Oh
cloud of light.
yeah. Yep, I see it. Absolutely. They're like little black little fighter plane. Yeah, I can see the planes.
Yeah.
Wow. And where did you see this? Where was
This,
this?
that was in Rowlett, Texas. My wife and I were eating dinner at a restaurant or lunch at a restaurant, and I heard jets. And I was spent 6 years in the Air Force. I knew a little bit. I like jets. I like aircraft,
Hmm.
and I recognized that there were more than one. I said, I'm going to go look at these planes. And I went out the front of the place, and she joined me. And I said, "Can you see the two white discs in the sky?" And she couldn't see anything. So I could see clouds. That's all I see. And so yeah, and there was a crowd of people around, maybe 4 or 5. I wouldn't say a crowd, 4 or 5 people looking at this too, because fighter jets coming down in the neighborhood is just kind of an oddity. And
Yeah. Yeah,
when
we
this
see them.
flash of light went off, this woman said, "Did you see that? Did you see that flash of light?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That beam of light. I mean, yeah. So wow. So you dog fight. So there was you say there was two disc crafts
Yes,
in there. Yeah.
there's there's one in the upper right corner. It's hard to see, but it's in there, and the one in the lower left corner. It's just a little white dot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. I see. Yeah. Wow. I seen a disc shaped one. It was illuminated. It was kind of like I don't know, silverish disc, just all plain, just no nuts and bolts. Just it looked like all one piece. It looked like two plates. I'm sorry, a plate with two bowls, a bowl on the top and a bowl on the bottom. Just your typical flying saucer. I seen one of those, and it was in the clouds, and
yeah.
it came into there was chemtrailing going on actually, and this thing
Uh,
was actually hiding in the chemtrails, but it was poking out. It was like playing with me, and it's almost like it knew I could see it, and it was goofing around for a little while before it took off. And again, I wasn't the only one that's seen it. So, and I'm glad too because I've been told that by Autumn that if she didn't see these things with me, she would have never believed me. So,
yeah.
and that's how
Yeah.
it is. So, people, you need to look up. You need to put them phones in your pocket and start bending your neck the other way
Yeah, yeah.
because
Keep your eye in the sky.
yeah, now there's people like me who have just seen the crafts, and want more, want more, want more. Are you one of those who would say I'd watch what you wish for?
No, and I should mention this that after this happened, I was really angry. I was really angry for a lot of years, and
Mm,
but over the years, I've thought this over, and if these things really wanted to hurt us, they would have hurt us much worse than what they did. I think that the burns that we suffered like sunburn, and the burns to our eyes, I think those were inadvertent. I don't think that was purposeful. I don't think they did that, maliciously. I think it just happened because that's the environment that they live in. And
I'm surprised though because well, I guess it's different people, different situations, but I'm surprised they didn't try to fix that before they brought you back. Usually they don't leave too much evidence if they can help it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we drove back to the air base, and Toby was whatever they did to me. They gave him a double dose because he was really hurting, and he was curled up on a bench seat of this old Chevy that I had, and we drove back to the air base, and we didn't really talk about it. We noticed that both of our watches had stopped. Mine stopped at 2:41. His stopped about the same time. They were wind-up mechanical watches. They weren't quartz or anything. This is 1977.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd saved that watch. It never worked again.
And
But
and so is that something that's typical with the watches? I heard that with death, with the watches, but with abduction too, is that watches usually seize up?
Mine sure did, and I had trouble wearing a watch for a year and a half. If I wore a mechanical watch on my arm, and I needed one as an EMT, I needed one on my arm. Uh, the thing would stop working after 3 or 4 weeks. So
Interesting.
I started buying. They sold these on a little cardboard board. They sold them at the drugstore. These pocket watches were $3 a piece, cheap pocket watches, and I could carry one of those in my pocket and use it, and they would last, 6 months or so. It was about a year and a half before I could wear a watch again.
I haven't wore a watch in years. I went about a good 8 years without a cell phone. Didn't even have one of those. Didn't care to have one. And even in that time, I didn't. I don't wear. I've never been one for watches and necklaces and things like that. I don't know. I like to go light, I guess. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, but it's a good thing to have on maybe if you go through what you went through. So at least you know what time it all started, right?
yeah. We know something happened at 2:40.
Yeah, I've had people who have told me stories about them putting needles in their eyes and things like that. I'm telling you what. So basically, I mean, you're not able to do anything then. That's what's amazing to me is that they're able to get into your head. They're able to control things enough where I mean, because my instinct I'd be wanting to throw them little guys all over the place, but that ain't going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. It's not going to happen.
Oh.
And it's the equation, it's the example that I gave. You know, they're the alpha, we're the dog.
Yeah, yeah, it just kind of makes you. It's like going in the ocean. You go from the top of the food chain right to the bottom almost when you go into that new world, right? And it's kind of with
Great
these
example.
ETs too. And you're right. If they wanted to they could do what they want basically. I've heard cases where they've shut down nuclear missiles, and they've obviously fighter jets don't have a success against them, and so they're superior. And then I got to thinking last night. I'm watching in space, and I'm watching the night sky last night, and I'm looking up, and I'm seeing now. I know what satellites look like when they go by, and I know when something's trying to look like a satellite, but it's not. And that's what last night I'm seeing. You could see. I think the Space Force is in full gear up there. I think because I see things moving around up there all the time. And I don't think it's just satellites. But speaking of satellites, if you're ET, I mean, boy, how perfect is that? Just tap into the satellites. You can listen to everything. You could everything you want. It's kind of like the NSA and Facebook or something like that.
Yeah,
People put all their
yeah,
information. I mean, you got to wonder, are we really putting those satellites up there for all our technology? Or is it, sometimes you wonder if it's not all an alien agenda. And you might say, well, they haven't hurt us yet. And yeah, they haven't. But, what are we there? Maybe we're their pets. Maybe that's all we are. We might be just a fishbowl.
yeah. A zoo.
A zoo. There you go. Every now and then, just like you dip in with the net, you grab a fish. Is this the one you want, ma'am? Every now and then they dip down in and they grab one of us. Is this the one you want, sir? I don't know.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well.
I mean, they could be so far ahead of us. I mean, if we've been around what, a couple 100,000 years at max. If you had a civilization that had been in existence for 10 million years, could you imagine how advanced they would be? I mean, we'd be like mold in a petri dish to them.
Yeah. There's based on a lot of the people that I've spoke with and the different things involving Mars and all this, I think there's a much bigger story. I think to our being here, and I don't pretend to know what it is, but part of me thinks there was some kind of war out there in space. Something happened. Mars got obviously Mars lost. Maybe we're part of that civilization moved from there to here. I don't know. I think Venus was part of that. I think there was a lot. I think some of this life that we see, I think some of them are advanced civilizations from way before, not necessarily just from Earth, but I think maybe from Mars or one of these other planets that used to, have it going on at one time, and they've
I
gotten so advanced that who knows? They're either here on Earth with us, or they don't need to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw, and he was talking to George Noory, uh, and it wasn't the radio show. It was Coast to Coast on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And George was talking to this guy, and he was a physicist who worked for, I think it was JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratories. And he was talking about how Mars, and he gave all the scientific explanation that I didn't understand, but he said that there's clear evidence that there were two very large nuclear explosions on Mars.
Dr. John Brandenburg, yes.
That's him.
Yep.
That's the man.
Oh yeah, I've talked to him several times. He's a brilliant guy, and he would know. He's been in on that, the testing. He worked with NASA and all that stuff. So I mean, oh yeah, and he said that the signatures that you find on Mars are exactly what you would expect to find from nuclear bombs going off. And he says you can tell the difference between a nuclear bomb and an asteroid impact.
Yes.
So whatever it wasn't natural. So that tells you a lot. Something went on up there. And then if you look at Earth, there's evidence here that something like that happened too, because you've got that big green glass sheet under the sand, where the Africa, the Middle East, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and they say for that to have happened, it would have took a blast like either a nuclear bomb or an asteroid. And I'm saying, hey, with the evidence on Mars, everything kind of points to something. Sometimes we hear about there was these two Atlantises and there was this war. And, I've had Frank Joseph Hoff on who talked about that. And, I don't know. Lemuria, all these places we hear about, they might not be all here on Earth.
Yeah, and maybe not be mythology. That could be reality.
Exactly, and so I think there's a lot more to the story. And there's a part of me that thinks the government knows, but then I don't know how much they know. I just don't know. I know they lie to us a lot, but I don't know exactly how much they know, and I don't know exactly how much they're in with these ETs, if at all. Now, some say that there's deals that have been made. A lot of speculation, a lot of theories, a lot of hypotheticals. But when it comes to solid evidence, the best evidence I have is through guys like you who have had these experiences, and certainly through my own sightings, that I know that there's something out there where we are being visited. I don't know how far it goes as far as governments and other planets go, but I imagine there's a link.
I think you're right. And I can tell you, I got a call. I published my book, and about 60 days later, I got a call from Tom DeLonge. Now, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know Tom DeLonge was a musician. I should have. My daughter played one of his songs at her wedding, actually. But
Yeah.
anyway, I pick up the phone, and he says, "Terry, this is Tom DeLonge." And I'm like, "Well, hi, Tom. How are you?" And he wanted to talk to me about my implants. And we had a nice long talk. And long and the short of it, Lou Elizondo came out to my house. Actually spent 2 days with him and filmed me telling my story for TTSA. And we talked about some of the, and he didn't give me a lot of information, but you can tell Lou knows stuff. I mean, he knows stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, these abductions, do you feel like there's been several, or do you think this was a one incident? What's your feeling on that?
I was abducted April 16th, 2019. And I think I can even actually prove it.
Oh, really?
Here's what happened. I don't, when I sleep, because of this PTSD or whatever it is, the best way for me to get a good night's sleep is I plug my iPhone, I put it in my shirt pocket, because I know I'm going to have to get up 2 or 3 times during the night. So I put it in my shirt pocket, and I listen to a YouTube channel that plays, 432 hertz.
Oh, yeah,
tones,
the binaural beats.
That's it. That's it. That's what
We're
I
on the
listen to.
same page, you and I.
Telling you, I believe in this stuff. And
Yeah.
and you know what it does? It helps me sleep and it masks all the noise. So I'm not freaked out if the cat jumps off the table and I hear this loud thump. I don't have to get up and wig out
We
over it.
do that here every night. We put it on. We put binaural beats on every night. I'll tell you what, it's so relaxing, and it's almost like I can't sleep without it now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. So
So I was doing that, and because my iPhone has such a bad battery, I had it plugged into this light socket. But my phone was in a T-shirt pocket, so it's on my body, on my person. On April 16th, 2019, I woke up at 5:55 a.m. absolutely out of breath. I was like I had run a 100-yard dash and I couldn't catch my breath. And I thought, oh, hell, I'm having another heart attack. I told my wife, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I went and I grabbed some nitro and she called an ambulance. And, my blood pressure was like 220 over 110. My pulse was tachycardia. I mean, it was through the roof. Um, and they came and they picked me up, took me to the hospital, and they did the routine. And you know the routine:
oh yeah,
chest X-ray, cardiac enzymes. Um, you know, they know what they're doing.
oh
And
yeah, EKG, the whole 9 yards.
EKG.
Yeah.
And long and short of it is, by the time I got to the hospital and got in the emergency room, my pulse was back to normal. I'd stopped sweating. I felt fine. So they kept me in the hospital for half a day for observation, and then just kicked me out. And
Yeah. That when my case, when I had my heart attack, days before that, I had like small ones where it would, you'd feel it. I didn't know what it was though. It just didn't feel good. I knew that, and then it would stop. It lasted 5 minutes, stop, and then I got that feeling. A couple days later, and this time it didn't stop, and so that was it. So
yeah,
sometimes you get them warnings, and for me, I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, nah, it can't be, but oh yes, it was.
yeah. Thank God you listened.
Well, I actually chilled out on the couch for a little bit, and I tried to, I went and got a glass of water, add some baking soda to it, and because the first time I felt like that, I did that, and it actually, I just got lucky, I guess, it stopped, but I thought that would help.
Yeah.
So I did procrastinate a little bit, but anyhow.
Well,
So,
let me get back to my phone. I'll tell you what
yes.
happened to my phone. They kicked me out of the hospital, and my wife and I went home, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was a nice day, a warm April day. And I said, because I try to walk a mile and a half every day, and I said I'm going to go see if I can do a mile today, and just because I got a little health app on my iPhone,
Yeah.
and I may have sent you a copy of that.
Oh, well, if you didn't, please resend it. If I'm gonna have to look because I'm interested in that kind of stuff. Since I had my incident, I'm always trying to do. I don't always just succeed, but I try to do the healthy thing. I'm said just like you, go for them walks, and
Yep.
you got to stay active.
So I look at my phone, and now I live in a ranch house with no stairs, and there are no basements in Texas. I have no stairs in my house whatsoever.
Yeah, same here in Carolina. There's no basements, because yeah. Mhm.
So I look down at my phone, and there's a reading for climbing stairs, and I usually don't have that unless I, go to an office building or something and climb a flight of stairs, and it'll register. And I look, and my phone tells me that I climbed 6 flights of stairs at 5:24 a.m. Now that was 31 minutes before I got out of bed.
Oh man. Oh
And
man. So that had to freak you out.
well, what freaked me out was the next page, the second page of the app shows, normally when you walk a flight of stairs, when you have a graph, the side on the left, I think they call it the y axis or something, the line on the left, as the graph goes up, it registers height. And then the bottom graph, the bottom line, horizontal one, movement on that to the right indicates passage of time. So it's passage of time on the bottom, and on the side, it's height. And it showed that I climbed 6 flights of stairs between 5:23 and 5:24 a.m. It shows 1 bar straight up. And I took it to T-Mobile, and I'm like, and I got the medical bills to back me up from the hospital and from the ambulance. I took it to T-Mobile, and the guy, Jordan, is everyone named Jordan anyway, no, he's real nice guy.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of Jakes at State Farm too.
Yeah. And I said, look, man, my phone, I had this weird event, and this was 31 minutes before I woke up. And can you check out my phone? What does this say? And he looks at my phone and he says, well, it looks like he said, you look like you climbed 6 flights of stairs between 5:23 and 5:24 a.m. So sometime within that span of 60 seconds, you were 60 feet over your house.
Oh,
and I said, wait a minute, how does this know where I'm at? By GPS? And he's like, it registers height by barometric pressure, change in barometric pressure. And I said, well, can you check the phone out for me? Is this a malfunction? He checked the phone out. He says, man, there's nothing wrong with your phone. I took the thing to Apple and talked to a woman there, and she says, well, and they were busy. She said, leave it. I'll run a diagnostic on it for you. And I came back and picked it up 4 hours later, and she's like, nothing wrong with your phone. Your phone's fine. And she says, it appears that you were 60 feet over your house.
Yeah, my next question to her would be, ma'am, would you like to try to explain that for me? How was I 60 feet above the house? Because I only have one explanation for that. And here's one of those starts. Don't think I'm crazy or nothing, but, last night I was 60 feet above my house. That is insane, man.
It is insane.
Wow. 60 feet. So, I mean, yeah, it is. That could be considered some evidence.
Yeah.
I mean,
anecdotal evidence.
Sure, people
evidence.
could say, oh, well, the app goofed up or this or that, but has it done it since?
No.
No? So the next time it does, you might, they might be coming to pick you up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So you are going for a ride in the middle of the night, man. I'll tell you what, have you tried setting up any cameras or anything?
My wife suggested that, and I thought about it. We moved. We did that. We moved. We moved, and I don't have cameras yet. I do on the outside, but I want one for the bedroom too.
Well, it's been told to me, even though I would still do it, but a lot of times I'm told that they're intelligent. They know you got cameras. So guess what happens to the cameras?
You get static.
Yeah, it's all fuzz.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah. So, but it's worth a try. Maybe you get a dumb one. I don't know. I doubt it, but maybe get a rookie. Maybe get a rookie who will make that mistake. But something tells me that ain't happening. Hey, hang on with me once more. We got to take our last break here tonight, and then